Last year I made the trip down to the British Motor Museum for AutoAlex's first ever car show. The inaugural Shedfest was that much of a success he's brought it back, and it's twice as big. So does that mean it's twice as good? Well, I'll let you be the judge. I'll take you around the full event, show you all of my favourites, and I'll let you decide down in the comments who should win the Lookship Car of the Show award, since I didn't get asked to present one on the day. You know, they must have just forgot. I'll forgive you, Alex. Anyway, less of the blabbing, go grab yourself a cuppa, get sat down, and let's get into it. Now then, made it a Shedfest. It's huge. It's literally double the size. Alex is putting on literally a show for over 10,000 people today. So, what do we have? Well, of course, we have shitboxes, but there are drift cars, there are show cars, there are any possible type of car. I'm going to go take you around an old American thing. Don't even know what it is, to be honest. But all your favourites are here. Mark McCann, Tavares, Alex, Taylor, Rory. Everyone you could possibly think of who's associated with AutoAlex is here today. And yeah, we'll go have a look around all the cars. So yeah, like I said, this event, which is being hosted at Mallory Park this year, is enormous. Now, I learnt my lesson after last year when I had to set off at 2:30 AM to make it there on time, so I made the trip down the night before. I stopped over in a cheap hotel in Leicester with what looks like Michael Scott's telly in the corner of the room, went for a curry, did a few laps of the local karting track, and because it was only a 20-minute drive away from the entrance, it meant I could have a nice leisurely drive on the morning to a nearby jet wash to get the truck prepped without having to worry about being late. Shout out to a relatively unknown YouTuber, Matt, for the recommendation. Anyway, if you want to see what we got up to in a bit more detail, go watch Mr. 𝙁𝘼𝙊𝙆's video after this because he can do the whole vlogging thing. It's not really in my repertoire. It's a good video as well. Once I arrived at the track, Chiro from Petrol Hedonism pointed me towards the main show area, so it's a good job that I stopped off and washed the truck, isn't it? And after catching up with a few familiar faces from last year and grabbing a brew, the crowd started to pour in. I was blissfully unaware of the chaos going on outside of the event. Apparently there were people queuing for over 3 hours to get in. But hopefully all of that is sorted for any future shows, because once you were in the gate, you were greeted by some of the finest shitboxes that the UK has to offer. And I don't think there's anywhere better to start other than with a monogram MG ZT V8. I overheard a visually impaired bloke with a guide dog say that it looked great, so just make of that what you will. It wasn't the last of the MG/Rover crew, there were plenty of them here today, which probably explains why it was necessary to bring a drip tray. But moving away from the gaggle of MGs, there were a couple of Nissan Cubes, which are definitely the Fiat multipler of our generation with those Marmite looks. I don't mind them. Next to that was a pretty much brand new GR86, which was nice because I've not seen one in the flesh yet. And opposite that was a tricked out VW wearing all things military. I know it won't be everyone's cup of tea, but those seats, even though they'd break your back, are a work of art, and the detail all throughout the interior was exceptional. Fair play. I believe the big American barge next to the V-Dub is a Dodge Monaco, and although that motor is probably the biggest one that you're going to see here today, it looks lost in that engine bay. The thing was huge, man. Now these guys are the epitome of Shedfest, the Rat Crew. Definitely not my cup of tea, but I think I'd still take the 𝙁𝘍𝙊𝙄𝙉 over the RX-8 that was parked opposite it. Shots fired. There is another show that I really fancy getting to at some point this year, and it's called the Festival of the Unexceptional. Cars like this Renault Laguna would probably be in with a chance of winning it. It was so boring, it was brilliant. Now if you know me, you'll know that I'm a sucker for an old Japanese boat, but one thing I do love more than a big wagon is a tiny truck. Obviously I'm a little bit biased, but I think they're just the best fun ever. I spent pretty much all day talking to people who said they'd love one, but they didn't know if they'd use it enough. However, they are more practical than you think, and everyone should have one in their life at some point, in my opinion. If you can't convince yourself to pull the trigger on a proper one, then how about this? I've had some daft air fresheners and stickers made up of the Acti. Unfortunately, they weren't ready in time for Shedfest, but if you'd like to grab one to rep the K-Truck, or just to support the channel a bit, then I'll whack a link down in the description. And if you leave a comment on this video, I'll choose a couple of winners at random to get both an air freshener and a sticker for free. You might as well subscribe while you're here as well. It costs nothing and it helps me out more than you know. Right, back to the cars. After having a closer look around the crown, this bright yellow bug and meaty wide-bodied Defender, there was yet another exceptionally unexceptional car parked up in the form of an old Renault 5. Absolutely glorious. Same can't be said about what was parked next to it though. Mooching down to what I believe is called Gerard's Turn, there was a slammed Cavalier, which you don't see every day, and something which 6-year-old Luke would have absolutely loved. Spyro the Skoda. It's a little bit different, isn't it? But I don't hate it. After passing a convoy of VW ups, I landed at the first of the off-road pandas, and I'm not gonna lie, I would love to do something like this, so watch this space. Of course I had to stop to check out this cappuccino. I actually saw this car at Shedfest last year, so it was nice to see that it had made it back and not crumbled into a pile of rust over the winter. And here's something that you don't see every day. Well, ever, in fact. A Fiesta with a go-kart on the roof. Probably the coolest thing that I've seen so far. Moving on down past this S15 and lifted Vitara. I bet no one said that sentence before. There was this lovely Club Sport Spec E30, which I think was definitely worthy of being invited into the main showground, especially if I'd been asked to go in there. And speaking of things that were extremely tidy, this bike-swapped 𝙁𝘍𝙾𝙊𝙆 has got to be up there as a potential winner of the show for me. It's not the first time I've seen it, but it blows my mind every time it shows up. It is stunning. Now this is a fairly rare piece of kit. There was another one that turned up actually, I just forgot to film it. It's a Volvo 400. It's basically a Swedish clone of a Honda Aero deck. Both really cool cars in their own right, and they've both got pop-up headlights, so big thumbs up from me. Roof box tents are all the rage at the moment, aren't they? But I bet you've never seen one fitted to a lifted smart car before. Well, today's your lucky day, I guess. Check that out. But what do you do if you want to go car camping and you're over 6 foot tall? Because, well, you're not going to fit in that tent, are you? Well, why not buy yourself a hearse? There's plenty of room in the back for activities. And the best part is, once you've removed the stiff, you've already got a built-in fridge. Mint, man. I said this before last year, it's called Shedfest, and yes, there are plenty of sheds here, but my lord, there are some things that turn up which are just the cleanest examples ever, like this little scamp. Yes, it looks like the love child between a Mini-Moke and Jeff, the 𝙁𝘍𝙊𝙆𝙆 thrust, but it is proper tidy. And hiding behind that was another K car, and it's one that's right up there at the top end of my list of favourites. A Daihatsu Mira TRXX Avanzato-R. That will look so good once you've spent a few hours detailing it. I've got no idea how Kirsty made it here and back to Teesside in her Corolla, and if you were wondering why I was checking a drip tray, let me just show you a picture she sent me the following day of her oil lines. Yikes. Moving on past this vet and fully built Saxo with some homemade rear aero was this beautiful 850R, which had the tidiest bit of the entire show, I reckon, but I didn't spend long looking at it because I genuinely think I might have found my next purchase. A Honda N-Box. It might not be the best family car possible. Well, I mean, it definitely isn't. It's literally parked next to 3 bigger and probably better options. But it would be cool to have one, wouldn't it? This Polo had driven all the way from Switzerland to be at the show. Fair play. And I was actually chatting to a guy called Michael who'd flown over from Tyrol in Austria specifically for the show, so shout out to him. I hope he fully appreciated how clean this Tigra was. I've personally never seen one without rusty rear arches, and I think I overheard the owner saying that it only had 33,000 miles on the clock. A proper 2000s time warp. There were more unexceptionally brilliant Vauxhalls a bit further down, and a tasty little French nugget in the shape of a Clio Williams with that iconic paint combination. There were Civics, Ferraris, GTOs, even cars that had been fully sprayed in bed liner to hold it together because they had so much rust, which is genius. I mean, who needs weld? And it wouldn't be an AutoAlex meet without an old BMW touring, would it? Very nice. Although I wasn't a fan of S2000 ownership, I could still appreciate this really tidy S2K with the matching Suzuki-style rear wing, and this Mark III Golf, which had Pokemon cards for a bonnet, which is probably worth more than the rest of the car put together, was one of about 10 cars that had markers left on them for you to sign, so obviously I had to. It's worth fuck all now with my signature on it. No matter what show you go to, you're always going to have a couple of immaculate fast Fords turn up, and this one was no different. This Escort Cozzy was turning everyone's heads, but I preferred this little Fiesta RS Turbo parked up next to it. It was just missing a go-kart on the roof to really finish it off. I didn't expect to fall in love with a Rover SD1 at this show, but my god, what a machine that is. And I'm generally not a fan of 350Zs either, but this one was very, very clean. It's just a shame that the camera doesn't really pick up how bright the paint actually was. On to the second of the off-road pandas at the show, and you could tell this one has lived a very successful life. It was battered, just like a true 4x4 should be. And just down from that was a car that I'd be lying if I said I didn't want to own. A Toyota Sierra, and it was the best one I'd ever seen in person as well.
class. I actually followed this Audi 60 into the show, and I think I've only ever seen one other in my life, so this was definitely up there as one of the rarest cars here. But if I turn around, parked up next to this Clio, which funnily enough is a motor that he's just sold, was Adam's Peugeot 406, that only a couple of weeks ago was brought back to life after being abandoned in a field for a few years. Good old Pierre, still alive and kicking. At this point in the video, you can probably tell I'm a little bit obsessed with Fiat Pandas. I don't really know what I like about them, but this 100 brake edition was gleaming. Lovely little thing. Up from that was Adam's car of the show, I think, a Dakar Yellow E36. And just across from that was another Crown, this time in the superior two-tone paint job with beige cloth interior. Here's yet another Panda. One boxy boy. And speaking of boxy boys, this was the first time that I've seen a Pro Box on UK roads. If anyone watches 𝙁𝘍𝙊𝙄𝙉, you will know that these are the true workhorses of Japan. But this one was factory fresh, another car that I'm adding onto my wish list. There was another Volvo 850R at the show, what are the chances of that, eh? And it was parked up next to a Sierra RS Cosworth, which don't really do anything for me because I'm a 90s kid, so I miss the hype train around them. But just like all of the other fast Fords here, it was very well presented. And there were a couple more Fords your dad'd love a few paces down the track too. I could have probably parked my truck on the back of this absolute unit. It was massive. If something like that ran into the back of something like this, you just wouldn't stand a chance, would you? I spotted a GR Yaris in the distance, but did it have a GR number plate? Of course it did. And just alongside this R36 Passat was an old Rover 200, which I think might have been my favourite Rover of the entire show. That interior brought back a bit of nostalgia, because my dad used to have a white one of these when I was younger. It's just a shame that you'd die if you hit a cardboard box if you were going over 5 miles an hour. They'd fold like a deck chair. We had more unexceptional cars, which are getting rare now, in the shape of an old Corsa B. And a couple of spots down from that was an M Sport Fiesta ST, which again, you don't see many of at all. I might have just found the king of Shedfest though. Of course, it's a Proton. Wow. Faded paint, faded bumpers, faded interior, but it's on dealer plates with the original stickers in the rear window. People take the piss out of these things, but the owners are some of the most determined people on earth, refusing to let these die out. Top job. Let's just switch it up for a second though, because I've spotted a purple FD RX-7. And across from him was a very, very nice Triumph Dolomite. Hiding behind the back of this van was another K car, a more modern one this time. Of course, it's a Daihatsu Copen. Now, I've got to say, if you can look past the troubles some people had getting into this event, it was a hell of a good day. The weather was excellent, the entertainment dotted around the track for all ages was great, there were more than enough food vendors to cater for everyone, and Alex even gave away a free car, sponsored by Car Vertical, of course. If you want to sponsor me, guys, you know, feel free to get in touch. But we've still got some of the best cars to come, including all of your favourite YouTube ones, so let's get back on the track. There wasn't a great deal of American motors here today, but this Plymouth was arguably the best on show. And directly behind him was a bit of a tatty Nissan Cherry, which for some reason or another, I really liked. Austin Powers must have been rocking about somewhere because his Jag was here. And after climbing up the hill at the back of the track, I found this sick little Corolla in amazing condition. Same can't be said about the MX-5 that was parked up next to it like. There was one of these brand new BMWs parked up at the very top, and a 928S on the opposite side as I headed back down. This royal blue Clio 182 makes me want one so bad. Got a funny feeling that one might accidentally turn up on my driveway once I'm back from the Nürburgring. And across from him was probably the least desirable Camaro ever built, but it was actually quite nice. I could, and maybe should have bought a Mini GP2 instead of the F56 that I have at the moment. It almost definitely would have been the better investment, they're holding their value so well. But I've got to skip forward because there is one of the best Honda Beats that I've ever seen on show. That paint is phenomenal, and the reg, well, that's top notch. A car that was a very similar colour was getting overlooked by a lot of people. Not by me though, because it's got a 6.1 litre Hemi V8 under the hood. Rapid. And over past this trio of Orlandis, the 𝙁𝘼𝙾𝙀𝘽𝙊𝙆 was making an appearance, which is a hugely impressive build. He came over and parked up next to me at the end of the day, and it really is big. But moving on to what I think was my personal favourite car of the show, it was an old Suzuki SJ. I don't really know what it was that I liked about it so much. It's boxy, it's Japanese, it's in really good nick. Yeah, just thought it was great. But unfortunately, it's never going to win an award at Shedfest because Taylor, Alex and the rest of the gang have a pretty unhealthy obsession with all things BMW. There was a chunky yellow baguette as I headed over to the pits, a Nova van, which I used to see all of the time as a kid, but not so much anymore, and don't ask me why, but a Daihatsu Terios caught my eye as well. I've got a thing for 4x4s today. Speaking of all-terrain vehicles, how about this? Obviously you need all of the traction you can get when towing this monster. And up near the pit was this Daihatsu Sirion, which has to win the award for the most JDM wheels. Funky. There was another GI Yaris, but did he have a plate to match? Of course he did. And over near the lake were a couple of older Hondas that maybe don't get enough love as they should. Firstly was this Honda Insight, a car that was sadly way before its time. It would have sold a lot more units today, I reckon. And down from that was a Prelude. Just check out that rear wheel steering, it's mental. Hey, I found the only GI Yaris in the country without a GR number plate parked up next to this RS Turbo, and there was yet another off-roader that I really like the look of. I headed over past the F1 sim towards YouTube Corner, and the first thing I bumped into was Rattaros's Ferrari 360. Next to that was a V12 Jag that I think Misha drove in. Opposite that was Mark McCann's Honda NSX, which he's put a Ferrari badge on because, well, why not? And a couple of cars down there was Adam C's not-so-white Chaser and one of Matt Armstrong's old cars, the wide-body GT86. This was probably one of the coolest cars there if you're into your EVs, a classic Mini that's had the high voltage treatment. Very, very smart. And the Scorpion trade stand were teasing me so much by showing off their Mini. It was so nice inside and out. I bet it sounds wild too. Right next to the Scorpion stand was Brett's car, which he somehow managed to get here despite fitting a clutch in the middle of the night and driving all the way from Cornwall. And by the time I got back from my lap of the track to see everything on show, the main stage area was completely rammed. A few more things had arrived: a lifted MX-5, a jaw-dropping BMW 2002, and Anarchy Garage had eventually made it in his Unimog, which was perched on top of an old Saab. Mental. I was surrounded by things far nicer than the truck. There was an old E-Type, a couple of Porsche 944s, Eleanor turned up, and Robin, aka Mr. Viking Detailing, brought one of his Espasses. But the last place to have a look around was at the cars that you actually see on Alex's channel, so let's go have a gander. Taylor's 6 Series was parked up in the centre, and his Nürburgring Trip Mini was right next to that. Luke's blue MX-5 was parallel to Jack and Ethan's 924, which was just as much of a dog in person as you'd expect it to be. And Edwin and Will's Fire Damage 996 that you'll have seen on their new channel top dead centre was in front of their stand. I did kinda forget to film Phil the MX-5 since I had a good look around him last year, but Alex's high mileage 993 was there for you to gawp at. Back over near the 924, Mikey Fernie had his latest Drive Tribe purchase on display, this Glacier White MG ZT, and there were a couple more cars that you might recognise from Alex's channel too. The Alpha, Miles, and Alex's old Fiat Coupe. Oh, and if you're up to date on videos, Taylor's crusty supercharged Mini was there as well. You definitely need a tetanus jab after working on that thing. And that's about it. Massive congratulations again to Alex and the rest of the team for putting this together. It was a fantastic show. It had been improved in pretty much every area over the one from last year, which was a really solid starting point to begin with. And if it wasn't for the hiccups outside of the event, I don't see how anyone would be able to complain about it. This video isn't sponsored, so if you want to support the channel, you can always grab yourself an air freshener or a sticker of the K truck. I'll stick a link in the description for that. Remember to do all of the usual stuff, you know, like, comment and subscribe. Let me know down in the comments who would have won your Car of the Show award. And yeah, thanks so much for watching, especially if you've made it this far. I've been Lookship, this was Shedfest 2024, hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!